All right, so where am I at? This is it, I think. All right, so we're going to deal with some proportions today. This is pretty easy stuff. So we'll get through it pretty quickly, and I'll get your assignment, and then y'all can work on whatever you need. All right, we're going to solve proportions, and then we're going to look at some problems using some proportions. Most of this is, like I said, pretty easy. There's a couple that's got a little bit of a uh, trick to it that we have to make sure we can do that could make it a little bit harder. So a ratio basically is comparing two quantities by division. Most of the time we write it as a fraction. You can use the word two, or you can use colons. A to B can be expressed as A to B or A over B. That's a ratio, just a single thing, no equal sign or anything, one fraction, comparing two things by division. So if we wanted to write a ratio, it says a group contains 60 women and 30 men. What's the ratio of women to men? Whatever you want in the ratio of first goes on top, then second goes on bottom. So in this case, it would be 60 over 30. And that you do want to go ahead and reduce your ratio. 60 over 30 reduces down to 2 over 1. And if it was just asking for the ratio, you could go ahead and leave that fraction as 2 over 1. So we know that there's 2 women for every 1 man. Or you could write that ratio as 2 to 1 or 2 colon 1. Okay. So that's just putting something as a ratio is putting it into a fraction and simplifying it. Your calculators will simplify it down to help you out there. Now, when we talk about a proportion is a statement that says two ratios are equal to each other, such as, let me get this draw. We all know that if we have a fraction of 4/8, that simplifies down to 1/2. So 4/8 equals 1/2 is proportional. That is a proportion, right? We know 4/8 reduces to 1/2. So basically, it's comparing two equal fractions. Thank you. And what we also know true about proportions is if you multiply their cross products, notice 4 times 2 equals 8 times 1. Cross products are equal in proportions, and that's what we use to solve them. 8 equals 8. Okay? So be aware of that. And that's all that's saying right there is the cross products are equal. So here is the gist of what we're doing today. Is you're going to be asked to solve a proportion. If we have 63 over x equals 7/5. So when we're asked to solve a proportion, one of the numbers is missing. So in order for this to be proportional, what we do is we cross multiply 63 times 5, and that's going to equal 7 times x. And then whatever 63 times 5 is, let me go over to the side. That's 315. 315 equals 7x. Then that becomes just a simple one-step equation. We divide by 7, and we get x equals 7 goes into 31 4 times with 3 left over. It's just not going to go evenly. Let me get my calculator. What's it going to be? 315, 45. Yeah, well, I can do stuff in my head. Yeah, 35. That goes 5. Yeah. Thank you. So x is 45. So 63 over 45 is equivalent to 7/5. All right, now this one is the one that could cause some more problems. All right, we're still going to do the same thing. It's an equal, so we know the cross products are equal. So I'm going to say 20 times x, which is 20x. And then over here, I'm going to have 30 times x minus 10. All right, now this becomes an equation that we have to solve. Remember, we have to simplify before we start solving. So I'm going to distribute that 30, and that will become 30x minus 300. Then get the variable to one side, so I'm going to subtract 30x from both sides. And I get negative 10x equals negative 300. Don't forget to drop that negative. Divide by negative 10. And x equals positive 30. So what does that mean? That means when I plug 30 in there, 20 over 20 will be equivalent to 30 over 30. Okay? But that's the gist of dealing with the proportions. It doesn't really get much harder than that right there. Okay? So let's see if we have, I'm sure we've got some sort of word problem. All right, solving applied problems using proportions. Read through the problem, set up a proportion, drop units and apply cross product, solve for x. All right, so watch how this works. The property tax on a house with an assessed value of $480,000 is $5,760. So those are the two important things right there. Is a house that costs $480,000 has taxes of $5,760. So it wants to know what is going to be the property tax for a house that's valued at $600,000. So this is the type of problem where we set up a proportion in that they wrote it right there. They put the tax over the value equals the tax over the value. So if we've got two things we're comparing, we got to make sure we keep the fraction the same. So I'm going to put the tax, which is 5,760 over the house, the value of the house, which is 480,000, equals, and we're looking for the amount of tax on a house that is 600,000. So if you notice, it works the same way. I cross multiply and divide. So I'm going to have 600,000 times what? 5,760. It's going to be a big number. That is 3, 4, 5, 6 with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros. So 3 billion, and then that's 480,000 x, which means I divide by 480,000. So I'm going to divide that number in my calculator by 480,000, and I end up with 7,200. And then on things like this, does the answer make sense? If we pay $5,760 of tax on a house that's $480,000, does it make sense that we would pay $7,200 on a house that's $600,000? That's a higher priced house, but not by a bunch. So we're going to pay more taxes, but not by a bunch. So that does seem to make sense just by looking at it. All right. Obviously, if you got something that said $500,000, you would have to realize that that's not correct. You're not going to pay $500,000 of taxes on a house that costs $600,000, right? And you would also know if this went down, it wouldn't make sense because more house is not going to pay less in taxes. So make sure once you get an answer, ask yourself, does this make sense? All right, look at this one. Capture-recapture method is used to determine the wildlife population when it is impossible to count each individual animal within a population. So if you went to some state park somewhere, you wanted to know how many deer were on the property, it's not going to be possible for you to walk around the state park and count how many deer are there. Okay? So what they've done, they've come up with this capture-recapture. What they do is they take a day and capture as many as they can, many that they see. So let's say they tag, and they put a tag on their ear. Okay, so maybe they catch 35. They tag them and release them. Then another day they come back and they don't capture. Now they just look at the deer, count how many deer they see, and they note how many of them have a tag. And then they use that proportion to expand out to see how many animals are there. So their proportion they use is the original number of tagged animals over the total number of animals in the population, which is the X, which is what they're looking, equals the number of recaptured tagged animals over the number of animals in the second sample. I can't speak. So, how's this going to work? So, a biologist, they tagged 135 deer. All right, so that's the original number of tagged animals, 135. And this is the X because we're looking for the total number of animals in the population. Now, the next day or 2 weeks later, they come out and they don't have to capture anything. They just observe the deer as they're walking around, what they can see. And it said they observed 140 deer, 30 of which are tagged. So the number of animals in the second sample was 140, and 30 of those were captured. So what they're saying is that ratio that they saw 140. Well, that first day, they captured every one of them they saw. And they're saying the proportion that they saw to didn't saw is the same as what they saw that were tagged. So anyway, they're going to say multiply 140 times 135, and that is 18,900. And that equals 30x. And then we're going to divide by 30. And that is 630. So what they can estimate is there is about, now this isn't exact, they're saying they think there's about 630 deer on their state park or this wildlife refuge. Okay? But they're setting up a proportion. Let's see if there's anything else. I think that is probably it. Yep, that's it. So I will open up, what is this? 4.4. I will open it up. And y'all have that to work on.